What if the brightest light was hidden in a place no one could see? In the snowy silence of Denver, a billionaire's daughter was born blind, untouched by color, untouched by light. Doctors called it hopeless. But one winter, a quiet maid named Mara began to believe in something science could not measure: the light inside a child's soul. When music became color and touch became vision, even the cold mansion began to breathe again. But on the night the storm returned, the line between miracle and mystery vanished forever. What do you believe? That love can heal what medicine cannot? Tell us in the comments below. Your words might be the light someone else needs tonight. The snow had swallowed Denver whole. Every window shimmered white, every street hushed under a blanket of silence, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the Montgomery mansion, the fire crackled faintly, its warmth unable to thaw the cold that lived in its owner's heart. Richard Montgomery, a billionaire known for his precision and pride, sat by the glass wall, watching the snow fall endlessly. He had built empires from nothing but could not buy the one thing he desired most: sight for his daughter, Lily. At 10 years old, Lily had never seen the snow she loved to touch. Her hands would press against the frosted window, tracing the patterns she could only imagine. "Does it shine like the stars, Daddy?" she once asked. Richard had smiled weakly, his voice breaking. "Brighter, sweetheart, much brighter." But lately, even his voice had grown dim in the great silence of the mansion. That winter, a new presence entered their lives. Mara Ellis, a woman of quiet grace, her eyes holding the calm of someone who had survived storms before. She had been hired as a housemaid, yet her gentle ways soon made her something more. Even Rex, the family's 5-year-old German shepherd, followed her with a loyal ease, as if he sensed a healing soul beneath her modest exterior. The first time Mara met Lily, the girl was sitting cross-legged near the piano, her fingers resting on the keys without pressing them. She was listening to the rhythm of snow tapping the window, to the heartbeat of the house. Mara knelt beside her. "What do you hear, sweetheart?" Lily smiled faintly. "The snow. It's whispering." That night, Mara lingered by Lily's bedside as the wind howled through the pines. She placed her hands gently over the child's eyes, whispering a prayer she'd learned from her grandmother, not for sight, but for light within. Outside, the snow kept falling, endless and pure. And though neither of them saw it, a faint glow from the fireplace danced across Lily's face, soft, golden, and trembling like the promise of dawn. In the flickering firelight, Lily whispered, "Mara, do you think snow can dream?" And for a moment, Mara thought she saw the girl's eyelids tremble, as if something inside her had begun to awaken. Morning broke over Denver like a whisper, pale, cold, and hesitant. The Montgomery mansion gleamed beneath frost, yet inside, the air carried the same quiet sorrow. Mara moved silently from room to room, her hands wrapped in thin cotton gloves, carrying the warmth of someone who remembered what kindness felt like. When she entered Lily's room, the girl sat by the window, her small hands hovering in the light. "The snow feels softer today," she murmured, her sightless eyes reflecting the faint glow. Mara smiled. "Maybe it knows you're listening." From that morning, their secret ritual began. Every day, Mara would bring a small bowl of warm water scented with lavender and gently massage the area around Lily's eyes. Slow, rhythmic circles, while soft waves of alpha brain music played from a small speaker she'd hidden behind the curtain. "This music," Mara whispered, isn't just for your ears. It's for your soul. At first, Richard thought little of it. If it keeps her calm, let her do it, he told the butler. But over time, he noticed something he couldn't explain. Lily moved differently. She reached for her cup without fumbling, walked along the hallway without stretching out her hands. Once, he saw her stop just before bumping into a chair, as if she had felt the space ahead of her. Rex followed them faithfully, lying near the fire as Mara hummed to the music. Sometimes he'd lift his head and tilt his ears, sensing an invisible harmony between them. The mansion, once echoing with silence, now pulsed faintly with life, gentle vibrations of sound, warmth, and belief. One afternoon, as snow drifted beyond the tall windows, the family's physician entered unannounced. He frowned at the sight before him, the maid's hands touching the girl's temples, the music murmuring in the background. "This is unprofessional," he said sharply. "You'll confuse her with nonsense." Mara froze, but didn't move her hands. "I'm not confusing her," she said softly. "I'm helping her listen to the world another way." The doctor turned to Richard. "If you value your daughter's health, you'll stop this charade." That night, Richard stood outside Lily's room, watching through the half-open door. Lily was laughing quietly as Mara hummed and Rex wagged his tail beside them. For a brief moment, he couldn't tell whether what he saw was foolish or miraculous. When the song ended, Lily suddenly turned her head toward the fire and whispered, "It's orange." Mara's breath caught. The girl had never known the word for color before. The storm softened. Snow no longer screamed, it sang. Lily sat by the grand piano, her fingers tracing the smooth keys as Mara's soft humming filled the air. Every note was a thread of color only Lily could feel. "Close your eyes," Mara whispered. "I already do," Lily giggled. "Then listen harder," said Mara. "What color is this sound?" Lily tilted her head. "It feels blue, like when I touch the window and it's cold but gentle." And that was how their lessons began, painting with music. Each day Mara brought sounds for Lily to see. The rustle of Rex's fur, the crackle of fire, the murmur of falling snow. She would say, "That's gold," or "That's white with tiny sparkles." Slowly, a world invisible to everyone else began to bloom in the child's mind. One made not of light, but of emotion. Then one afternoon, Mara found a stack of paper and crayons in the storage room. She placed them on the table. "Let's see what your world looks like," she said. "I can't draw," Lily whispered. "You can feel. That's enough." Rex lay beside them, tail brushing the floor as the music played softly in the background. Lily began to move her hand, her fingers following the rhythm of a song. Hesitant at first, then flowing, as if guided by something unseen. Hours later, when the last note faded, a swirl of colors covered the paper. Orange bursts melting into blue rivers, white dots scattered like snow. Mara's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't random. It was alive. That evening, Richard walked past the parlor and froze. His daughter sat surrounded by papers, her face glowing with joy. "She drew this?" he asked. "Yes," Mara said quietly. "She hears colors now." Richard stared at the drawings. The lines carried something he couldn't name. Freedom. Later that night, when Mara tucked Lily into bed, the girl whispered, "Kumara, if I can draw what I feel, maybe I can also see it someday." Mara kissed her forehead. "You already are, sweetheart. Just not the way the rest of us do." As the firelight flickered, Lily's eyes moved faintly, a glimmer beneath her closed lids. And for the briefest second, Mara thought she saw reflection. like snow catching sunlight. Winter deepened. The snow in Denver no longer looked soft. It had become iron, heavy and unmoving. Inside the Montgomery mansion, warmth flickered between faith and fear. Richard watched his daughter from the window. She stood in the garden, her hands reaching out to the air, Rex circling protectively nearby. Her steps were sure, balanced, as if she could see the invisible path beneath the snow. "Mara," Richard said slowly. "How does she know where to go?" Mara didn't answer. She only smiled. "She listens." But soon the whispers of wonder turned into murmurs of doubt. The household staff began to talk, the blind girl walking unaided, finding her way through rooms she'd never seen. Rumors reached Dr. Howard Langston, the family physician, who returned one morning with a team of specialists. He didn't knock. He simply walked in with cold air clinging to his coat and said, "We're running new tests today." Lily sat calmly as lights flashed and machines hummed and doctors muttered to one another. Hours later, Langston entered Richard's study holding a folder. "Her eyes remain unchanged," he said flatly. "Her retina is non-functional. It's medically impossible for her to see anything." Richard's throat tightened. "Then how do you explain what I just saw?" The doctor sighed. "What you saw was muscle memory, instinct. She's pretending without knowing it. The mind can trick the body." At that moment, Mara entered quietly. "The body doesn't lie," she said. "Sometimes it remembers what the mind refuses to believe." Langston turned sharply. "You're a maid, not a scientist." "I'm someone who watches," Mara replied softly. "And I've seen light return to her face when she hears the music." The tension hung heavy. Richard looked between them, reason against faith, knowledge against heart. For the first time in years, he didn't know which voice to follow. That night, unable to sleep, he walked through the silent mansion. From Lily's room came the faint sound of humming. He paused at the doorway. Lily sat with her sketchbook, Rex at her feet, the lamp dim. Her hand moved gracefully, tracing shapes that seemed alive. When she turned toward the light, her eyes, still clouded, reflected a faint glimmer, like stars caught beneath ice. "Hook ending," Richard whispered, trembling. "Lily, what are you drawing?" She smiled. "The sky, Daddy. I think I saw it today." The storm came without warning. Denver's sky turned the color of iron, and the wind howled like a wounded beast. The Montgomery mansion trembled beneath the snow's weight. Inside, the light flickered and died. "Where's Mara?" Richard shouted as thunder rolled above. The staff didn't know. She'd left that morning to visit the church near the forest, her weekly ritual of quiet prayer. Upstairs, Lily sat in bed, pale and trembling. "Daddy," she whispered. "My head hurts. The colors are too loud." Her small hands pressed against her temples as Rex whined beside her, pacing, restless. Richard called the doctor, but the phone line was dead. Panic crawled up his throat. Then Lily gasped, clutching her chest. "It's dark again," she said weakly. "I can't see the sounds anymore." Her voice faded into silence. Rex barked sharply, once, twice, and ran toward the door, scratching wildly. Before anyone could stop him, he leapt into the blizzard, vanishing into the white storm. Miles away, Mara was walking home through the woods, her scarf pulled tight, her breath a ghost in the cold. Suddenly, through the snow, she saw a shadow racing toward her. Rex, his fur covered in frost, eyes burning with urgency. He barked, then ran ahead, stopping every few steps to look back. "Show me," Mara whispered, and followed him into the storm. It took nearly an hour to reach the mansion. The door burst open with the wind, snow sweeping into the halls. Richard turned in shock as Mara rushed in, drenched and trembling. "She's upstairs," he said hoarsely. Mara didn't hesitate. She climbed the grand staircase, every step echoing like a heartbeat. When she reached Lily's room, the girl was lying still, her lips pale, her breathing shallow. Mara dropped to her knees, placing both hands over the child's closed eyes. "Lord," she whispered, "if this child carries light inside her, let it rise now." For a long moment, nothing moved. Only the storm's moan outside. Then Lily's eyelashes fluttered. A faint shimmer passed across her eyes, like frost catching dawn. Her fingers twitched, reaching upward. "Mara," she breathed, "I can see you." The blizzard outside began to ease. The wind calmed. Through the window, a single star appeared above Denver, the first one of the night. Hook ending. Downstairs, Richard looked up through the broken glass ceiling, and for the first time in years, he saw stars, shining in his daughter's eyes. Dawn unfolded over Denver in shy pinks, the kind of morning that made even broken things look mended. The storm had passed. In its quiet wake, the Montgomery mansion breathed for the first time in years. Mara sat at Lily's bedside, counting the girl's breaths the way sailors count waves. Richard stood at the window, hands clasped, a man who had wrestled with the world and finally surrendered to something gentler. Rex dozed by the heater, one ear lifted, listening for miracles. When Lily opened her eyes, they were still clouded, yet not empty. There was a soft pulse in them now, a candle lit behind frost. "Good morning, sunshine," Mara whispered. Lily turned toward the sound, and then past it. "The light," she said, testing the words, "is warm today." Her small hand found the edge of the blanket without groping. She sat up on her own. By noon, Dr. Howard Langston had returned with a portable unit and a brace of technicians. He examined, scanned, sighed. "Medically," he announced, "her retina remains non-functional. Whatever changes you believe you're seeing are cortical compensations, heightened proprioception, auditory mapping. She cannot see." Richard didn't argue. He simply wheeled a small cart into the room. A sketchbook, a wind chime, a metronome, a folded bike helmet. "Then explain this," he said softly. Mara set the metronome to a steady alpha tick. The wind chime trembled near the window. Lily closed her eyes, smiled, and drew, lines sure and effortless, placing a bright sun exactly where the window cut the room. She reached for the helmet, buckled it, stood, and walked to the door without touching a single wall. Langston's pen slipped from his fingers. He stared at the scans, then at the child moving through space, as if the air itself were mapped under her skin. "Impossible," he breathed. "Not impossible," Mara answered, eyes wet. Remembered. That afternoon, Richard asked for privacy. He knelt by his daughter's chair, voice unarmored. "I have chased every cure money could buy, and none taught me to listen. Will you teach me, Lily?" She giggled, tapping his wrist to the metronome's beat. "First lesson. Feel the room, then the room will feel you back." At sunset, a pale rim of gold pooled on the floor. Lily lifted her face. Her pupils flickered, as if the world behind them had leaned closer. "Mara," she whispered, "I think the snow is shining." Mara exhaled a prayer. Richard took his daughter's hand. Rex thumped his tail like a drum. Down the hall, a reporter's voice crackled from a TV. News of a billionaire calling a press conference. Richard glanced at Mara. "Tomorrow," he said, "we tell the world what light really is." The press gathered in a hospital conference room that smelled of sanitizer and nerves. Cameras blinked like metallic fireflies. Richard Montgomery stepped to the podium without his armor. No practiced grin, no polished script. Just a father with snow still drying on his coat. Mara stood in the back. Lily sat beside Rex, tiny fingers resting in his fur. "For 10 years, Richard began. I bought answers. I got invoices." A low murmur. "My daughter was born blind. Every expert told me what she would never do. Last night, in a storm, a maid put her hands over my child's eyes and prayed for a light none of you could measure. Today, my daughter walks rooms she has never seen." A reporter raised a hand. "Are you claiming a cure?" "No," Richard said. "I'm claiming a debt. To attention, to patience, to faith." He lifted a folder. "We'll audit every bill, fund honest research, and end any program that profits from hopelessness." Then he did something stranger. He stepped aside. "Mara?" Mara approached the microphone like it might startle. "I'm not a scientist," she said. "I'm a witness. We massaged, we breathed, we listened to alpha waves and to a child's courage. Maybe her eyes are still closed. But her body remembers light, and now her mind does too." Someone whispered, "Placebo." Another, "Neuroplasticity." Mara smiled. "Call it what you need to. We'll call it hope." By afternoon, Richard signed the founding papers for the Garden of Light. Free sensory therapy, music-based orientation, caregiver training, and scholarships for blind children nationwide. He named Mara director. Spring began to tease the edges of Denver's snow. In the mansion's courtyard, a narrow lane was cleared. Lily climbed onto a child's bicycle, helmet snug, Rex trotting sentinel. The metronome ticked from a pocket. The wind chime rang at the far gate. "Ready?" Mara asked. Lily grinned. "I can feel the sky." She pedaled. Her balance held, her line true. At the gate, she braked and turned perfectly, laughter flying behind her like silk. Richard laughed too, the kind of laugh that sounds like a door unlocking. Later, inside, Lily read a raised print story with eyes closed, reciting whole lines by rhythm. She painted a sunset she'd never seen, and it looked exactly like evening. When the day dimmed, the family sat beneath the first brave stars. "What did we learn?" Richard asked. Lily leaned against him. "That light lives where love listens." Rex sighed, content. Mara looked up at the young knight and whispered, "Amen." The wind chime answered with a single clear note, as if the snow itself nodded yes. In every season of our lives, there are moments when reason falls silent, and only faith speaks. Maybe the miracle isn't in what our eyes can see, but in what our hearts dare to believe. When love listens, even darkness learns how to glow. May this story remind you that God still works quietly, through ordinary hands, through simple acts of care, through people like Mara, and maybe through you. If this story touched your soul, please share it to bring light to someone's night. Leave your thoughts below and subscribe to Human and Animal Kindness, where every story carries a spark of grace. May God bless you and everyone you love.